February 21, 1951, West Oakland, California. A park. An ordinary afternoon. Two brothers playing where they always played. Luis Albino was 6 years old. His brother Roger was 10. Their family had moved from Puerto Rico to West Oakland only a year before. New streets. New language for some of them. A new country still settling into the shape of home. A woman approached the boys near their house on Brush Street. She was, by every account that survives, in her 30s. No name, no plate number, no face anyone could ever put back together with certainty. She started talking to them the way strangers sometimes do, easy, unthreatening, the kind of conversation a child has no reason to fear. Before we get into this story, let us know where you are watching from, and if you like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Then she made Luis a promise. Candy. That was the offer. That was all it took. Luis went with her. Roger didn't. Not at first. He followed them, close enough to watch, far enough to still be a 10-year-old boy who didn't know what he was looking at. At some point, he stopped following. He turned around. He ran home. He told an adult what he'd seen. That decision, to go back for help instead of staying close, would define the next 73 years of his family's life, and no one in that moment could have known it. Because here is what nobody tells you about being the one who survives a disappearance like this. You don't get believed right away. Roger told the adults in his life exactly what happened. A woman. A promise of candy. His brother walking away from him toward a stranger. And the response from the people whose job it was to find Luis wasn't urgency. It was doubt. Investigators didn't fully believe a 10-year-old's account of a kidnapping. Instead, they reached for a different explanation, one that didn't require chasing a stranger who had already vanished into the city. They theorized Luis had wandered off on his own and ended up in the water. Think about that for a second. A woman walks up to two children in a public park. One of them disappears with her, and the working theory becomes, maybe the 6-year-old drowned. The Coast Guard was sent out, not to chase a lead on a woman in her 30s, to search the waters near Jack London Square for a body. A 6-year-old boy was still alive, being taken farther from that park with every passing hour, and the search for him had already started looking in the wrong direction. The bay turned up nothing. It couldn't have turned up anything. The boy they were searching for in the water was already somewhere else entirely. State and federal authorities opened an investigation. They worked the case the way cases were worked in 1951. Flyers, contacts, witness interviews, hope. No leads came. And while officers searched docks and waterways for a body that didn't exist, Antonia Albino did the only thing left to a mother in her position. She showed up. She went to the police's missing person bureau, not once, not as a formality, over and over, for years, asking the same question in a building full of people who mostly didn't speak her language. Antonia didn't speak English, so she never went alone. A neighbor walked with her some days. One of her older children walked with her on others. Someone always had to come along, not for company, but because without them, she couldn't even ask the question she'd come to ask. Picture that for a moment. The one parent fighting hardest for her son couldn't fully participate in the system that was supposed to be helping her find him. At first, she came almost daily, then weekly, then monthly, then, eventually, once a year. That progression isn't a sign that Antonia gave up. It's the shape grief takes when it has nowhere left to go. The frequency changes. The hope underneath it doesn't. She kept going back for over 5 decades. Antonia Albino died in 2005, 54 years after the park. 54 years of monthly visits turning into yearly ones, turning into a life that never stopped waiting for one specific phone call. That call would eventually come. It would come 19 years after she died. In 1966, 15 years after the disappearance, the Albino family tried something new. Luis would have turned 21 that year, old enough, the family reasoned, to potentially show up somewhere official, specifically on records tied to military service exams, the kind every young American man of that era was funneled through. It was a logical theory. If he was alive, if he was in the country, if he was using anything close to his real information, a federal process built around eligibility and registration might surface his name. The family didn't just file a request and wait. They traveled multiple trips to Puerto Rico, chasing the possibility that Luis had somehow ended up back where the family's story had started, or that someone there might know something no one in California did. They found nothing. Here's the part that turns this from sad into something closer to unbearable. At the exact moment the Albino family was combing through military eligibility records in Puerto Rico, Luis Albino was already an ocean and a continent away from that paperwork, living under a different name, raised by people he believed, fully, completely, were his real parents. He wasn't hiding from the records. He didn't know there was anything to hide from. He grew up. He became a firefighter. He served 2 tours in the Marine Corps during Vietnam. A man who put his life on the line for a country that had spent over a decade quietly failing to find him. He had children, eventually grandchildren, an entire life built on a name that wasn't his, on a history that wasn't true, on parents who were not the people who had carried him, fed him, and searched for him in 1951. Every record the family checked for the next several decades would come up empty for the same reason. They were looking for Luis Albino. He didn't know that name applied to him. In 2020, one of Luis's nieces did something millions of Americans were doing that year. Out of simple curiosity, she took a consumer DNA test. She wasn't looking for a missing uncle. She had no reason to expect the results to connect to anything beyond family history. The test returned a match. A man she didn't know. A relationship close enough that it couldn't be a coincidence. She tried to reach out to him. He didn't respond. For most people, that would have been the end of it. A strange notification. An unanswered message. A mystery quietly shelved. She didn't let it go. In early 2024, she brought her theory to the Oakland Police Department, the same department that, 73 years earlier, had sent the Coast Guard to search a bay for a body instead of a kidnapper. This time, the case moved. The FBI and the California Department of Justice got involved. They worked to confirm what a DNA match had only suggested, and they confirmed it. The unknown man from the genetic test, the one who never wrote back, was Luis Albino, alive, in his 70s, a retired firefighter, a combat veteran, a father, a grandfather, a 6-year-old boy who vanished from a West Oakland park in 1951, had been living an entire American life, this whole time just a continent away from the family that never stopped looking, and one DNA test, taken on a whim, was the only thing that ever closed that distance. In June of 2024, Luis Albino flew back to California, 73 years after a stranger offered him candy in a park. He stood in front of the people who shared his blood and his real name for the first time since he was 6 years old. Among them was Roger. Roger, who had followed the woman and his brother that day in 1951 before turning back for help. Roger, who told the adults in his life the truth and wasn't fully believed. Roger, who carried that afternoon for the rest of his life, not knowing if his brother was alive, dead, or somewhere in between. He got to see him again. He got to know that the choice he made as a 10-year-old boy, running home instead of chasing further, hadn't cost his brother anything. Luis had lived. Luis had built a life. Luis had come home. Roger died 2 months after that reunion. Their mother, Antonia, the woman who showed up at that police bureau for over 50 years, daily, then weekly, then monthly, then once a year, didn't live to see any of it. She died in 2005, 19 years before her son walked back into the family's life. 2 people who spent decades carrying this loss did not get to carry the relief. But Luis is alive. He has children. He has grandchildren. He has a brother's memory of a reunion that happened before it was too late for at least one of them. That is the resolution this story can actually give you. Here is what it cannot give you yet. The woman who approached 2 boys in a West Oakland park in February of 1951 has never been identified. No name, no confirmed fate. No explanation for why she chose that park, that day, those 2 brothers. The investigation into who took Luis Albino and why remains open today. 73 years later, the boy has been found. The person who took him never has.